As I promised, this session we're going to dedicate to studying a Midrash, and it's a fairly well-known Midrash. It's called Tanuro Shel Akhnai. It's like a legend in the Talmud. The oven of Akhnai, or of an Akhnai, of a boa. And I chose to study this Midrash because I think it's a nice summary when we analyze it properly. It's a nice summary of all of the concepts and the foundation of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, everything that we've been studying up until now. All right, so first of all, I'd like to apologize in advance. It's possible that this class, I've never taught this before in English. It's possible the class may go on a little bit longer than scheduled. If anybody needs to leave, wants to leave, before we finish, that's completely understandable and fine by me. Okay? So this passage in the Talmud is divided into three parts. All right, it has an introduction, it has a middle section, and it has like another clarification at the bottom. So we'll start. This is found in Baba Mitzvah. It says, Tanan Hatam, right? We have quoted over there in one of our sources. Chatacho huliyot v'natan hol ben huliya lehuliya Rabbi Eliezer mitaharo v'chachamim mitamein. Ze tanuro shel Achnai. All right, so a question is brought to the Beit Midrash. I'll give you just as a background, what is this halachic question they're discussing? Although the halachic question itself isn't really relevant to the Midrash per se, it's more of an introduction. So we have laws of Tum'ah and Tahara, purity and impurity, and kelim, right? Vessels, cups, plates, and stuff. They could also get impure, and then they can't be used for teruma, can't be used in the Beit Mikdash. There are ways to fix this. Well, there are certain kelim where if you break it down, or let's say you melt it down, if it's made of aluminum or metal, and put it back together and make a new keli, then it's pure. And here they say, how about an oven? We're going to take an oven that we cook in. It got tameh, it became impure. If we break it and reconstruct an oven, then it's fine. He said, how about an oven that is already kind of like broken up? You take an oven and you cut it up into like 3 sections, and you fill the areas between them with sand, and you turn it into, and it's like an oven that kind of looks like that. It's like a wavy oven. So that was the question that was brought to the Beit Midrash. And there are 2 opinions. Rabbi Eliezer, just like to say, he's known to be, he's actually called Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, the great. He is one of the greatest of the Chachamim. He has a whole book of Midrashim on his own. It's called Purity and Impurity, the chapters of Rabbi Eliezer. It's up there with Midrash Tanhuma, Midrash Rabbah, the Midrashim of the Talmud. So he's considered to be a huge genius, a great Hacham. He is the teacher of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Eliezer mitaharo. He says this kind of a tanur is tahor, and Hachamim mitamein. And the rest of the Hachamim in the Beit Midrash, or the majority of the Hachamim, they say no, it's tameh. Ze tanuro shel Akhnai. He said, and this is what we refer to as the oven of an Akhnai. Akhnai is a boa. It's like a boa constrictor. That snake. And now they're going to ask, why is it called Tanuro Shel Achnai? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, right? Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shemuel. Shemuel was one of the students of the Yehuda HaNasi. We're already going much later to a different period. He says, why is this called a Tanuro Shel Achnai? שהקיפוהו בתשובות כעכנה וטימאוהו. Because they ambushed him. The Chachamim ambushed, they came at him from all sides. Like a boa when it constricts, it strangles its victim. It says, so too the Chachamim came at the Rabbi Eliezer, challenging him, right? Shekifuhu b'tshuvot. They kept answering him every reason that Rabbi Eliezer gave to make it tahor. The Chachamim countered from different angles and said, no, it's tameh. Tana. All right, this is another quote. Be'oto hayom yeshiv Rabbi Eliezer kol teshuvot sheba'olam velo kibbelu himenu. This is Rabbi Eliezer. On that day, Rabbi Eliezer, he responded to the Chachamim with all the teshuvot that you can think of, any response to any challenge of the Chachamim. However, velo kibbelu himenu, the Chachamim did not accept his reasoning. And so, Rabbi Eliezer was mitaher. The majority of the Beit Din, the rest of the Chachamim, were mitamein. They said it's impure. And that's the first section, the introduction to the Midrash. All right, so now we're kind of like expecting to go into what were these questions and answers. And here, the Talmud takes us to a very, very bizarre story. It says, Amar lahim, he said to them, Rabbi Eliezer said to the Chachamim, Im halacha kemoti haruv ze yochiach. He points to a carob tree. And he says, if halacha is according to my opinion, if I am right, this carob tree should prove my point. Ne'ekar haruv mimekomo me'ama. All right, this carob tree was uprooted and flew 100 amot away. 100 amot is like 50 meters. The amrele arbameot ama, and some say it wasn't 100 amot, it was 400 amot. What's the difference between 100 amot and 400 amot? Is it more convincing if it's 400 amot than if it's only 100 amot? If you witness this,
200 meters.
what's that?
200 meters.
200 meters, right? But is it more convincing if you saw this, if you witnessed this carob tree being uprooted from its place and flying 50 meters or 200 meters or 3 meters, would it make a difference to you?
No.
No. Okay. Let's just keep that question in mind. Amru lahem, right? He responded, "En mevi'in ra'aya min haruv." Sorry, they responded to him. They said, you can't prove your point based on a carob tree. Hazar ve'amar lahem, right? And Rabbi Eliezer responded to them. He says, Im halacha kimoti, if halacha is according to my opinion, if I am right, amat hamayim tuchiach. All right, how do you call it? The aqueduct that brings the water from one place to another, right? It shall prove my point. Hazru amat hamayim la'achorehim. So the water in the aqueduct started going backwards. Amrulo en mevin ra'aya me'amat hamayim. Says you can't prove your point based on the aqueduct. Hazar ve'amar lahem im halacha kemoti kotle bet midrash yochichu. Right? If I am right, halacha according to my opinion, the walls of the Beit Midrash will prove my point. Itu kotle Beit Midrash lipo. Right? So the walls of the Beit Midrash started to fall in. Ga'ar bahem Rabbi Yehoshua. Right? Rabbi Yehoshua gets up and he yells, apparently to the walls. Amar lahem, he said to them, Im talmidei hachamim menaschim ze et ze ba'halacha, atem mati bechem. Right? If the hachamim are challenging and we'll say even like dueling each other in halakha, why are you butting in? What is this your business? This is between the hachamim. Lo naflu mipnei kevodo shel Rabbi Yehoshua, right? So the walls didn't completely fall down out of respect to Rabbi Yehoshua. Velo zakefu mipnei kevodo shel Rabbi Elazar. It says, however, but they didn't go back to their original position out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer. Ve'adain matin ve'omdim. He says, and these walls, they're still slanted, like the Pisa Tower. That's their, from then, that's their estate. They're slanted. Hazar ve'amar lahim. Rabbi Eliezer, responds to them, and he says, "Im halacha kimoti min hashamayim yochichu." Says, if halacha is according to me, if I am right, the heavens will prove my point. They'll back me up. Yatzta bat kol ve'amira malachem etzel Rabbi Eliezer shalacha kimoto b'chol makom. Right, so this voice came out of heavens and announced, right, what do you have against Rabbi Eliezer that halakha is like him in every instance? He is brilliant, he knows, just listen to him. He's the greatest of the hachamim, accept his opinion. Ahmad says it is not in the heavens, right? We learned this already. The Torah, once Moshe received the Torah and passed it on to us, it is no longer in the realm of the heavens. And that is that's the bizarre story of what went on in the Beit Midrash that day. That must have been a very interesting day for the Hachamim. And the third part, they're asking, what does this mean? Lo b'shamayim hi. Mai lo b'shamayim hi. What is the meaning of lo b'shamayim hi? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, shekvar nitena Torah mehar Sinai, v'hatum ba ahare Rabbi Hatot. Right? Rabbi Yirmiyah, he says, the meaning of lo b'shamayim hi is that the Torah was already received from Sinai, and the Torah says you have to follow the majority opinion. In this case, the Hachamim, which is that the Tanur is Tameh. Ashkahe Rabbi Natan le'Eliyahu. It says Rabbi Natan, we also have a tractate on his name, it's called Avot de Rabbi Natan. It's not part of the Talmud, it's called the Masechet Ktana, also kind of Midrashim. They say this Rabbi Natan, he went to Eliyahu, speaking with Eliyahu Navi. Amar le, ma ya'avid kuchabrichu behahi sha'ata. Most of this is Aramaic. He says, what was God doing during this time when the Hachamim were dueling each other and challenging each other in the Beit Midrash? Amar le, he said to them, Eliyahu responds, Kahayich, he was smiling. Ve'amar, and he said, Nishuni banai, Nishuni banai. He says, my sons have defeated me. My sons have defeated me. This is a very, very well-known midrash. It's one of the more famous midrashim. And the basic idea, concept of the midrash, I think, everybody really pretty much understands that we don't make Pesach Halakha based on prophecy, based on external sources to whatever was given to us in Halakha. Now, this is a midrash. Midrashim need to be analyzed. They're very subtle. The wording that was chosen is chosen specifically to point out to certain ideas. All right, so analyzing a Midrash requires creativity. And I would like whoever has any ideas or insights to participate, to share their ideas. Okay, so now we went over the Midrash in general. Now, does anybody, I mean, this is basically a big discussion among the different streams. These Midrashim, they're fantastic on one hand, or maybe they're poetic. Are they to be taken literally? Did the Hachamim actually witness Rabbi Eliezer saying, this carob will prove my point, and then the carob tree being uprooted from its place and flying 50 meters away, or 200 meters away? So the Rambam, right, and the Geonim, they say, you need to understand that these are allegories. For instance, we say, on that day, באותו היום, השיב רבי אליעזר כל תשובות שבעולם ולא קיבלו מהם. Right? There was a discussion going on here. According to the Hachamim, the way they present it to us, it's an epic discussion between the Hachamim. And then we go into the discussion between them. Amar lahem im halacha kemuti, right? If halacha is like me, this character will prove my point. Where's the challenge? Where's the question? Where's the answer? That's not brought before us. So what's going on here, again, this is a Midrash. This is my analysis of the Midrash, and everyone is invited to participate. He's not bringing his actual challenges. It's not a recording of the discussion. However, there are different types of questions that were brought before Hachamim, different types of we call it Masau Matan, going backwards and forwards of deliberance between the Hachamim. And each one of these things comes to point out to a different type of answer, different type of question, and how the Chachamim dealt with it. All right? Im halacha kemuti says, if halacha is like me, the haruv will prove its point, a carob tree. Now, a carob, first of all, has significance. What's the symbolic meaning of a haruv? A carob tree, they say, the Chachamim say, that a person doesn't plant a carob tree for himself or his sons because it takes 70 years for it to generate fruit. Is it really 70 years or not? Doesn't matter. What matters is the meaning of the haruv in the Chachamim's literature. Meaning this is something that's meant to be planted for generations and not for me. Another hint that Rambam gives us, Maimonides, he says when you're analyzing Midrashim of the Chachamim or of the prophets in the books of prophecy, many times the word that is brought isn't the actual word that they're hinting to, but it has the same letters of the words. And we see this explicitly with Jeremiah, with Yirmiyah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks Yirmiyah, he says, what do you see? He says, Ma ata ro'eh? He says, Makel shaked ani ro'eh. I see a branch of an almond tree. Ufanav poneh pnei safona, and it's pointing to the north. And God says to him, the meaning of that is ki shoked ani al devari la'asoto, is because I am it's finished in my mind that I am going to bring the destruction of the temple, right? Ki shoked ani. There is absolutely no connection between the meaning of shoked and the word shaked. Shaked means an almond, Shoked means I'm dedicated. So we see this explicitly in one of the prophecies, and this repeats itself in many of the Midrashim. So I'm going to ask you, Haruv, these letters, Haruv, that make up the word Haruv, what else could they be referring to? Any ideas? This would require a little bit of understanding of or knowledge of Hebrew.
Maybe Rachov, distant.
No, that's different. It's the Rahok, it's with a kuf.
Uh-huh.
The Haruv is the same words used for Horeb. Horeb, where we made our covenant with God, is Har Horeb, the Mount of Horeb. It says Haruv ze yuchiach. Now, let's go back to Aharon and Korach. Right? There was a big dispute between Korach and Aharon. Korach, he had all the Chachamim with him, 250 men, and Aharon. And he was accusing Aharon, saying that why are you, this is nepotism, why are you taking Moshe is appointing his brother, it's protexia. I'm just as great as you. Maybe I should be the great Kohen Gadol, right? The high priest. And what did Aharon say? What was the proof in the end? He took a tree, his staff, and he had to bring some sort of sign. What was the sign that he brought? Does anyone remember? He says the chosen one, his staff will start to bring forth flowers. What happened here when he said, I'm going to take this carob tree? What's going to happen? What would we expect? Maybe something creative should happen in this tree. Maybe it'll start to bring forth carobs, maybe earlier than it's meant to. It says, Ne'ekar harov mimekomo. This carob was uprooted and it flew 100 amot away. And some say 400 amot. I want to demonstrate this point with a different passage in the Talmud, in Masechet Horayot. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Pligu ba Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan. There's a mahloket, he's recording a mahloket between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he was also president of the Beit Din, and the rest of the Chachamim. Hadamar Sinai Adif. One says Sinai is greater, the Hadamar, and the other says Oker Harim Adif. The uprooter of mountains is better. What are they talking about? There are two types of Chachamim. The Chachamim of the Talmud, they differentiate between two different types of Chachamim. One is called Sinai, and the other one is called Oker Harim, someone who uproots mountains. Rav Yosef, Sinai. There's a certain rabbi, Rav Yosef, and he is the type that's referred to as Sinai. Rabbah, Oker Harim. Rabbah is considered to be Oker Harim. What is the difference between Sinai and what is the difference between Oker Harim? So Sinai is somebody who has great fluency in halakha. You come to him with any question, and if the halakha was already set on this, if it's written down already in the Mishnah, he knows it off by heart and he could recite it to you right away. If it's already in the Shulchan Aruch or in the Rambam, he knows it off by heart, and he holds a memory of like 1,000 chapters of halakha. He's called Sinai because when you ask him a question, it's as if you're being answered from Har Sinai, because it's so fresh in his mind, as if he just learned the halakha from Sinai and he knows it. The other type is called Oker Harim. It's somebody who is great with pilpul. So maybe you ask him a question, and this is best applied when it's a new question. And he says, I don't know the halakha in this case. However, some aspects of it is similar to this halakha, and some aspects is similar to that halakha. And it's called Oker Harim because he's able to, in his mind, take like two mountains, uproot them, v'tohanan zebazeh, and crush them together and make a new mountain out of it. And it's called Oker Harim. This is what today we refer to more as pilpul, if you've ever heard that term. And somebody is able to make, sometimes even like make these acrobatics in his mind, right? And say, this is like this and this is like that. So these are two types of hachamim. One who's well-versed in whatever is already settled law, and the other is great at extrapolating law from other laws. And Rav Yosef was Sinai, and the Rabbah is considered Oker Harim. And they're asking, which one is preferable? Why? Because they need to appoint a new Rosh Yeshiva. Shalhu letaman, right? They sent a question to Eretz Israel. Eze mehem kodem. Which one should we appoint first? Who has right of way first? Shalhu lehu, and they responded, Sinai adif. Sinai is better. The Amar Mol that the Chachamim say, Hakol tzerichin lemarech hitayah. Right? Everybody needs someone who can clear out the beads, the wheat. Meaning,
I have a
it's as
question.
if he has them all in his storage of wheat, and he's able to feed you the halacha as soon as you have a question. Sorry, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question. So the way I understand it, if someone is given a new issue, so to say, he has to know the halacha very well to come up with the solution for the new issue.
Right.
So wouldn't the second person be the first person and more? Do you know what I
No,
mean?
because maybe he's not as fluent. Meaning, let's say there's 1,000 chapters of halachot. He's very good with some of them, right? He knows them very fresh. And maybe the others, he's not as well versed in them. If you come to him with a question, he'll say, well, he knows a lot of halachot, but he may not have like as great a photographic memory as Rav Yosef, right? The Rabbah, and you say, okay, so you know what? I know this halacha and I know this halacha, and I'm going to try to derive the halakha from them in this case. You go to Rav Yosef, who'll say, well, yeah, this exact issue was addressed already, and this is the halakha. This is what the Beit Din said. What's
I
the
think
danger?
I understand.
Huh?
I think I understand. I think one is more about, like, if we think about it in simple terms, one is more about memorizing, and another one is more about analytics and applying.
Right. Or it could be like one has, like the Oker Harim is very logical. You're right, analytical. However, what's the danger with an Oker Harim?
That he might not remember something correctly, and then that would lead to a wrong interpretation.
Well, let's assume that whatever he remembers correctly. And he has a decency to say, I don't know on the things that he doesn't remember or doesn't remember correctly. Put it that way. But based on what you said, what could the possible problem be with Sinai? He's Oker Harim, right? They refer to him as someone who uproots mountains. There is one mountain, though, that you cannot be Oker, and that is Sinai. Or as brought here in the Midrash, Horev, Haruv. What happened to this carb? This carb, which we can interpret it to be also Har Sinai. He's coming and he's using his pilpul. He says, I am going to do these acrobatics. I'm going to prove to you that this tanur should be tahor. And he says, this charuv will prove my point. And then what happened to the charuv? Nothing constructive happened to it. It was uprooted. Ne'ekar haruv mimekomo. He is an oker harim. The problem is that the har, the mountain that he uprooted, was Sinai itself. That is the danger with an oker harim. Because he could not remember a certain halacha and do this mental procedure in his mind to derive a halacha from two other unrelated issues, displacing a halacha that was already settled. Now my question also is, well, this Midrash could have seemingly be brought about any dispute between the Hachamim. However, the specific dispute, this specific Midrash was brought about a dispute on something referred to as Tanuro Shel Achnai, right? The oven of a snake, of a boa snake. Now, we'll get to that soon. By the way, Ne'ekar haru mi mekomo me'ama, it was displaced 100 amma. All right. Another thing to realize here is if we're already playing around with the letters, mea and amma have the same letters exactly. Maybe that's why they chose 100 amma. The amrele arba meot amma, and some say it was really 400 amot. The word 4 amot itself has symbolic meaning to the Chachamim, right? They always refer to arba amot shel halacha, the 4 amot of halacha, or the 4 amot of a person's space, the 4 amot around the person. They say ever since the Beit Mikdash was destroyed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all he has in this world is the 4 amot of halacha. So we're seeing here is ne'ekar haruv bimekomo, right? This displacing of a settled matter of halacha already from Sinai, right? And that's why some of the Chachamim want to point out it wasn't 100 amma, it was for each one of those amot, it was really 4 amot. Arba amot amma, meaning displacing halacha. Amru lahem en mevin ra'aya min haruv. Right? So that's why the Chachamim said you can't bring, they're saying you can't do these mental acrobatics to prove your point. Hazar ve'amar lahem, he comes back to them, he says, right? If I am right, then the aqueduct will prove my point. And what happened? Hazru hamayim lachorehem. The waters receded, they went backwards. Again, it's something destructive. Any ideas what amat hamayim could be? The peshat is an aqueduct. But more symbolically, what could it be talking about?
Emet, like truth.
Right? Emet. Emet of what?
The Torah.
Why do you say the Torah?
Because Torah is compared to water.
Exactly. And Ma'im el Torah. So it's talking about the fundamental, basic truths of the Torah. I want to go into another passage, right? Amarav Yehuda Amarav. In Masechet Sanhedrin, Rav Yehuda speaks in the name of Rav. Before we spoke in the name of Shemuel, right? Rav and Shemuel were both students of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. They both went to Bavel. We'll learn about this later on in our course. They both went to Bavel and they both had their own yeshiva. Right? Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. In the name of Rav, this is in Bavel. He says, what are the requirements for making someone a dayan in the Sanhedrin, to appointing someone to be one of the judges in the Supreme Court. אין מושבים בסנהדרין אלא מי שיודע לטהר את השרץ מן התורה. All right? We can only place in the Sanhedrin somebody who is bright enough to purify reptiles based on the Torah. All right? Reptiles is explicit in the Torah that it's tameh. All right? However, he needs to be bright enough to be like an Oker Harim who can prove that a reptile should be tahor. Amarav and Rav said, Ani adun v'taharenu. I will pass judgment to purify, not actually make a verdict that it's tahor, but I will use the midot, the 13 midot that are used for new laws to make a derasha. I will use it to prove that they should be tahor. It says, Umana hashem emit umar betumah tahor, sheret she'eno mamit umar betumah, eno din sheyeh tahor. It says, a snake, if you take a snake, right, and it kills, right, it's able to kill, and it passes on tum'ah. However, while it's alive, it's pure. So to a sheretz, other reptiles that don't kill people, right? Just like a lizard. Lizards, they're harmless. So if this midah is called it's called kal v'chomer. Kal v'chomer, meaning we have a light case and then we have a heavy case. So stringencies on the light case should definitely apply to the worse, the heavier case, and the opposite. I will call it lax laws that apply to the heavier case should definitely not apply to a lighter case. So the heavy case is the nahash, is a serpent. A serpent is marbeh tumah. It passes on tumah to other things, and it also kills. It's able to kill a person. Sheretz, however, other reptiles like a lizard, she'eno memit, it's harmless, doesn't kill anyone. Umarbeh tumah, and also passes on tumah. Eno din sheyeh tahor, so shouldn't that also be tahor? It's not as bad as the snake, and the snake is tahor. Velohi, however, it's not. Midei deha ve'akuz ve'alma. This is just an exercise. Okay? It is a simple truth of the Torah that the sheretz is tameh, right? However, in order to be appointed to the Sanhedrin, you need to be able to prove the opposite point using the 13 midot. Meaning, just because somebody brings a great derasha, as great as it may be, to prove his point in the Sanhedrin, it doesn't mean that it's true. It's just a way, it's one of the tools the Chachamim have to form an idea, and convince others to make Pesach Halacha according to their idea. However, these tools can also be used to uproot a halacha that already exists. Like what we were learning before, dinim uflaim. Remember him, dinim shenilmedu b'chat midot. These are the dinim that we learn using one of these 13 midot. Ubahem nofelet machloket, and there could be dispute among the hachamim, because one will use kal v'chomer, one will use gezer hashava, one will use klal ufrat, right? So there's a dispute between the hachamim. So v'nifsak bahem adin kedat harov al pi ha'kinanim, right? However, once there is a majority who agrees upon a certain opinion, that becomes the halacha. Bameh devarim amurim k'shadavar shakul, right? This is when it's, how do you call it? When there's even opinions and they're fighting each other. V'lachen omrim, and therefore they say the hachamim im halacha nekabel, right? If this is an accepted halacha, something we have tradition on, we shall accept it. If this is Sinai, will accept it. V'im ladin. However, if you're using this, if you're trying to prove your point only through the Yud Gimel Midot, v'im ladin yesh, there's an answer, because any logic can be countered. All right? What is the discussion here? The Tanuro Shel Achnai, right? This is the oven of a boa. This is exactly what they're talking about. The Rabbi Eliezer is mitaher. He's taking the sheretz, the reptile, and he's purifying it. And the Hachamim are saying, no, it's tameh. Remember, this specific discussion is just a pretext to this Midrash. The point is that Rabbi Eliezer, he's one of the greatest of the Hachamim ever. And he is saying that the sheretz is tahor. And the Hachamim are saying, no, it's tameh. Says, Im halacha kemoti, if halacha is like me. First he uses pilpul. He tries to use his logic. And then he comes and he gives other answers. And he says, Amat hamayim tuchiach. Right? And the Chachamim say, no, you're going against. Hazru hamayim nachorehem. You're going backwards. You're going against the simple truths of the Torah. The emet of the Torah. The truths of the Torah. Right? You see, your waters receded, they went backwards. Hazar ve'amar lahem, came back to them, said, right? The walls of the Beit Midrash will prove my point. And then what happened? They didn't grow, they didn't strengthen. Something destructive, they almost collapsed. The Beit Midrash almost collapsed with all of the Chachamim inside. He took Kotlei Beit HaMidrash Lipol until Rabbi Yehoshua came up, stood up, and he yelled at the walls of the Beit Midrash. Or maybe it doesn't say who he yelled at. Maybe he yelled at the Chachamim. Maybe he yelled at Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer. The Peshat seems to be that he yelled at the walls. However, this is all open to interpretation. Ga'ar b'hem Rabbi Yehoshua, Amar lahem, and he said to them, if the Chachamim are challenging each other in this way, menatzchim ze et ze b'halacha, atem mati v'chem, why are you interfering? Maybe he's yelling at the students who are now meddling in. לא נפלו מפני כבודו של רבי יהושע ולא זקפו מפני כבודו של רבי אליעזר, right? So they stayed static, they didn't fall, they didn't collapse. The institution of the yeshiva lives on. However, they didn't straighten out. Ve'adayin matin ve'omdin. What does that mean? Any ideas? Any suggestions? Anybody? In my opinion, what this means is that this issue hasn't been resolved yet in the Beit Midrash. Even today, 2,000 years later, we see that there is a mahloket among the Chachamim of whether, what the next part is, right? Whether we can make Pesak Halacha based on, let's say, Kabbalah, or whether we should be strict according to the Talmud. The heavens will prove my point. A voice came out of heaven and said, Rabbi Eliezer is the greatest. And this is also, most people that go according to Kabbalah, or let's say they want to make Pesak Halacha according to the Zohar, they say, how could you go against one of the greatest Hachamim, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? And those who don't make Pesak according to Halacha, they say, it's true, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is one of the greatest Chachamim, and Rabbi Eliezer is also one of the greatest Chachamim. However, Pesak Halacha is derived in the Beit Midrash, right? And it's Acharei Rabbim Nahatot, and we go according to the majority opinion. And we make Pesak Halacha according to the Talmud, and not according to a different book that isn't part of the halachic literature. And today, you'll have many Hachamim that are strict according to what is Ikar Adin, what does the Talmud say, and the others are, what does the Talmud say? However, what does the Kabbalah say? And maybe I'll adopt some of the halachot from Kabbalah, even though they aren't part of halachic literature. And that's what, in my opinion, Adain Matin ve'omdin. This issue has not yet been settled in the Beit Midrash. What is lo b'shamayim? Says, well, we studied this. Once the Torah was given to us, Hatumba, it's no longer in the realm of the heavens. The authority over the Torah Sheba'al Peh rests in the earthly Beit Midrash. The heavens cannot interfere anymore with the Torah. It is no longer God's. The Torah is ours. Torah Sivaranu Moshe, right? He commanded it to us. Morasha Kehinat Yaakov, the legacy of, or the inheritance of the community of Yaakov. And only this community of Yaakov is able to make Pesach Halacha if new things arise. Ashkahe Rabbi Natan Eliyahu, Rabbi Natan went to Eliyahu and he said, during this epic battle between the Hachamim and the Beit Midrash that almost completely collapsed the institute of the Beit Midrash, what was God doing at that time? And he smiled. God was smiling and he said, Nishuni banai, nishuni banai. Can anybody suggest what this could possibly mean? God see his sons fighting and he's smiling on the side. And he says, my sons have defeated me. I said halakha is according to the Rabbi Eliezer, and they're not listening to me. Why is God smiling?
Because he has achieved that a human being is able to judge like Hashem.
Okay.
And it's a new creation.
Right. And this is what Selem Elohim, being in the image of God, is. Elohim is a judge. God made us in the image of a judge, of Elohim. He wanted us to be judges. What other word do you see here in it? Nishoni.
Netzach is or the victory or the eternity also.
Eternity. Another way to read this is Nishoni Banai is that my sons made me eternal. They made the Torah eternal. How? Because the Torah is no longer susceptible to someone coming with superior logic and uprooting the Torah. By taking the Torah out of the realms of the heaven, we eternalized it. 2,000 years later, the Beit Midrash, while its walls are slanted, it hasn't collapsed. It's still there. And it's there because we outlived the Greek philosophers with their superior philosophy and logic. If someone with superior logic comes to us, we say, sorry, we have Masoret. And the Masoret says, En mevi'in re'aya min haruv. No. En mevi'in re'aya min haruv. And then if someone's going to come and maybe make all these nice dirashot, right? And try to prove a point, as great a dirashah as it is, but it's going against the amat hamayim, the basic truths of the Torah, right? We had someone like this. His name was Jesus. He said, no, it's the spirit of the law. It's not that you're not allowed to eat pork. It's the idea of not eating pork, right? And he could bring all these great dirashot. Says, "En mevin ra'aya me'amat hamayim." And then someone's going to come along and claim prophecy, like Muhammad was very close to the Jews at the beginning, and he claimed to be a prophet, and he's the last prophet, and he's going to change our Torah. And we say, Lo b'shamayim hi. There is one thing that still hasn't been settled in the Beit Midrash, and it's whether we do accept Zohar as a legitimate source of halakha or not. That is still yet to be decided. However, by being able to protect ourselves from law that goes against the Torah, and by false prophets who come to claim some sort of divine understanding and therefore change our Torah, we have made the Torah eternal. Mishoni banai, mishoni banai. And that's the end of the Midrash. The truth is, this whole passage also has an introduction to it and another section to it afterwards. However, it was important to me that we study this Midrash, analyze it, and I think it's a nice summary of everything we've been learning up until now. This last section, and then B'ezrat Hashem will continue what we were studying when we come back from, I guess this is spring break. Any insights, ideas, questions? Anybody want to share?
It's very high level, and what I am thinking about and a little worries me, the women, are they supposed to enter in this? It's a kind of men's logic, or very, very high.
I would say analyzing the Midrash is more women's logic than men's logic. It's a lot more creative. It's a lot more creative way of analyzing things. But
Yes.
the point is, I also want to demonstrate that many of these Midrashim that are brought in the Talmud, that they could be, they're fantastic and they're bizarre. They could be very bizarre. This is a very bizarre, like if this were to actually happen, or if you were to believe that this is something that actually happens, you would think that the Talmud and the Chachamim and the Midrashim are full of all these weird hocus pocus ideas. But when you realize, when you encounter a bizarre Midrash, and you understand that it's only bizarre because it's a poetic, it's like a poem, it's a work of art, it's illustrative, it doesn't depict reality, it depicts ideas in reality, and they need to be analyzed, and they need to be understood. And if you understand them, great, and if you don't understand them, that's fine. They're very difficult, but realize that it's not necessarily to be understood literally, but it was written by the Hachamim, by the sages, for the sake of other sages. Lehavin mashal u'mnisa right? In Mishle, Shlomo HaMelech says to understand an allegory, a mashal in a melisa, divrei hachamim vechidotam, the words of the hachamim and the riddles. And this is an example of one of the riddles of hachamim. And the Talmud is filled with them. What's most important is to understand that these are allegories and these are riddles, and anything that seems really bizarre, it's most likely not literal.